Hello, welcome to Live at Epiphan. Happy New Year to everyone. This is kind of our first show back after a little bit of a break over the holidays, so really appreciate everyone being here today. It's fantastic to see some of the usual suspects in chat, Tim Trott, Kim Sorson, and so on. And also our guest today, John, is in chat. So as we go through the show today, if you have any questions on any of the things we're discussing or for John, throw it into the chat as usual, and we will definitely address that. This is also kind of the first show of sort of a new format we're going to be working on here at Live at Epiphan. Much more conversational, much more vloggy, much more podcasty, if you will. So, of course, always send us any feedback that you have as we go through this and explore all kinds of fun topics. We have a ton of them queued up that we're planning on doing over the next few weeks. So stick around and stay tuned for those. But today we have a special guest, John Moore, who is a lead technology architect at Cerner Corporation. He is also a Microsoft MVP. He knows basically all things Microsoft in a lot of ways. And we wanted to talk to him about how he's using some Epiphan products through 2020 and obviously into 2021 as well, as the world has changed, and to help him do a lot of his job and a lot of other things. So everyone, welcome John. John, welcome to Live at Epiphan.
Hey, thanks for having me, George. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. As you said, I'm a technology architect at Cerner. Cerner is a large, about 30,000 employee size healthcare technology company. So we drive a lot of innovation around the healthcare technology space, and I am a technology architect in our internal IT space here at Cerner. We're based out of Kansas City, but we have people all over the world. And my main role is that I'm one of the guys that manages and operates our Microsoft 365 stack for those 30,000 associates. So we own everything from Microsoft Teams to Yammer to even Outlook and OneDrive, pretty much the entire stack. So I do a lot of looking at the roadmap, seeing where 365 is going, and how Cerner can leverage that technology to make our associates more productive to ultimately serve our clients in the healthcare space.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with that number of seats, that's a lot to manage.
It
So
is.
obviously you have the experience, but it also sounds like with that you had a lot of experience already using 365, which meant that probably in a
Mhm.
lot of ways, a transition that I think yourselves at Cerner and here at Epiphan and many, many, many companies around the world saw nearly a year ago was this very rapid switch to a work from home style environment. And using the tools in 365, I'm sure helped with
Mhm.
that since they were already in place. Um, Maybe let's talk about that a little bit. Like, tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that transition that Cerner had to go through in order to transition into remote work.
So fortunately, we've been using Office 365 at Cerner for about 4 years now. So we were well underway in our adoption journey.
Right.
We actually had already switched to Microsoft Teams for our entire meeting and collaboration platform the summer before. So in the June, July timeframe of 2019, we had made a big push into Microsoft Teams, and we were already in that, great modern platform. By the time COVID-19 came around, it was mostly around, okay, let's shift to work from home. We already had people everywhere, all over the world,
Right.
working where they can, but primarily we had most people on a campus. So the shift to work from home was mostly around how do you set up your home office? How do you share files accessibly? Things like that. Meeting best practices. Hopefully you don't hear my kids during this live stream, but handling things like that. So it was, I, for the most part, I think it was a pretty smooth experience for us to shift to work from home, and we got to focus mainly on optimizing and kind of perfecting the tools that you were already using for a couple of years.
Right.
And that's been a good benefit. So I've been able to take that knowledge and that history that we had with Office 365 and go help others in the tech community get their users up to speed and kind of help them with advice for how we drove our adoption.
Yeah, yeah. And I will shout out you do have a YouTube channel, and we'll make sure that we plug that a little more throughout the show. But you have a bunch of videos up there that people might find interesting and helpful. So if anyone is curious to know more about what John does, then check out his channel. He has a bunch of cool stuff up there. A lot of what you just said actually sounds pretty familiar because we did a very similar thing here at Epiphan. Of course, we've been using, online doc things through G Suite and various other tools for
Hmm.
years. But of course, pre COVID, we had also moved to using Zoom as a main backbone of kind of
Hmm.
communications. And so again, that transition was near instantaneous for us to switch to work from home. And so I think obviously here at Epiphan at Cerner, maybe we got lucky in the sense that we live in these spaces, so that
Hmm.
transition was actually pretty easy. Um, but there's still always gaps, and so maybe let's talk a little bit about the role of Epiphan pearls and how you've used them in sort of facilitating some of this work from home,
Hmm.
and where you're leveraging those to improve everything.
Sure. So it's kind of an interesting story of adaptation. We were already down the path where we were with Office 365 we've shifted platforms in 2019. What was kind of the next phase? And what I've seen developing in the industry in general is just the advent of DIY live streaming or self-service. I kind of see that as, one of the next places of shadow IT to kind of keep an eye on. Like when I first started my career, Dropbox was the big thing, but it hadn't hit the
Right.
enterprise yet. And you know, file sharing just came out of nowhere, and now we had to kind of put that toothpaste back in the tube, and we didn't want
Right.
that to happen with live streaming. So we were developing last year the idea of, okay, Twitch is a thing, Facebook Live, YouTube is a thing. Um, Eventually our associates are going to want to start working out loud in that way. So how do we prepare for that? And we were putting together these self-service live event kits, so that if you're having an internal, associate facing live stream, or if you're having an external like customer webinar, something like that, you could check out a kit from us, from the IT group, and set it up, have a professional live stream, and use the Microsoft platform so that it's within our governance, within our security posture,
Right.
and we didn't have to go catch people using like Facebook, or doing something that wasn't approved by IT security. And
Right.
we had gotten everything in place and got things ordered. We can talk a little bit about like how we landed, but ultimately we landed on the Pearl Mini as kind of the heart of that kit. And they arrived the same week as our work from home strategy. So all of a sudden we were like, hey, our guys who handle the devices and would check them in and check them out, they're like, we don't have the capacity to clean these. We want to do this in a safe way. So we're going to sit on these. And we're like, well, we need to use this equipment because we paid for it. So on my way out the door, I grabbed one of the kits, and that kind of turned into setting it up in my home office. And I use that to drive the almost remedial training of like, hey, so now you're work from home. Maybe you've ignored me for 3 years with Office 365, and you're not using the platform. We went live every day from the Pearl Mini to our associates to say, all right, guys, we're going to talk about OneDrive today. Let's get your
Right.
files in a safe place so you can share them easily. The next day, let's talk about, meeting best practices and how to light yourself properly and things like that. Just real practical knowledge. We went live every day for the first couple weeks of work from home, just because of like to support our associates and also like kind of have a social and emotional support system to kind of chat live and just
Right.
touch base every day with our community. And we kind of ran out of steam on that, and then I started moving to. I didn't really have content for every day, so I started going to like about monthly touch
Right.
bases, office hour type of a setup. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So, some of the applications you mentioned a few of them, these kind of these kits, and
Hmm.
obviously in those early stages doing a lot of employee training, trying to make sure they're actually using the tools available.
Hmm.
Where else did you find places to kind of use the Pearl in maybe more social contexts?
Yeah, so the plan pre-COVID was to use them a lot on campus for like culture groups. We have a strong developer culture. Cerner primarily makes software. We make many solutions for healthcare. And so we have thousands and thousands of engineers. We have a strong developer culture. And the idea was to check those out and have tech talks or
Right.
other kind of social gatherings where they would come to an auditorium. And because we have people all over the globe, those people would miss out, right? And it's hard to capture that same atmosphere with like a laptop on a podium doing the
Right.
meeting. So this allowed them to put a camera a little bit further back, make you feel a little bit more in the room and inclusive. One of the funnest ones that I was involved with at the beginning in 2019 was something we call Warm Cookie Wednesday.
It sounds
On our
delicious.
yeah on our campuses, our cafeteria started creating this event where at 2 o'clock on Wednesdays they would make batches of warm cookies, and it became a phenomenon where people would line up and start like come down and like network and chat with each other, work through problems and things like that. Uh, and it became so popular that a group on our enterprise social networking site spun up that was a little bit cynical or a little bit of a parody, where they started reviewing the cookies, like for texture and mouthfeel and temperature, things like that. And we were looking for a way to test this equipment and test this idea of DIY live streaming in something that's not in front of clients, when the pressure's really on. You don't
Right.
want to
Right.
try something new for the first time in front of the CEO.
No.
So we grabbed those guys who were doing the cookie reviews and we brought them in and said, hey, what if we did a live show from the cafeteria from one of the booths? And that turned into our warm cookie cast that we got to try out remote live streaming, and how do we bring in a from the field reporter from another campus, and hey, the line's looking crazy from here, back to you. We
Right.
practiced all of that and it actually turned into, oh my gosh, we have to work from home now. We've got to do live streaming where everybody's at home, the producers at their own house. And actually, we had like 6 months of practice already before that happened. So the Warm Cookie Wednesday actually turned into a real thing where we kind of had a little bit of practice under our belt before we landed in that situation.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I imagine obviously, clearly, Cerner has a culture of experimentation and playing with stuff and really kind of just seeing what's out there and what can help the company culture, which is amazing. Not nearly enough companies do that. Um, Obviously, it means you probably played with a bunch of different stuff. What
Mhm.
influenced your decision to focus on the Pearl Mini and go forward to fit some of these applications you've talked about?
Sure. Yeah, so in this process, we spent probably 6, 8 months identifying what stack do we want to deliver when we get this self-service live streaming thing off the ground. And we looked primarily at 4 different vendors or 4 different stacks. Some of them were a little bit more out of the box. You could bring it up, you could stand it up. There's a certain level of functionality there. Some of them were looking mostly at Twitch, honestly, looking at like, okay, if a 14-year-old can live stream Minecraft out of their basement and look better than a professional salesperson running a webinar, there's a problem there. Maybe there's something we can learn from that. So
Yeah.
on the other side of like the out of the box solution, then we also went literally to what can you get at Best Buy and put together. That was problematic for us because it was a lot of plugging these cables in and those cables in and kind of like getting it all into a hub and hoping it all stays connected okay, and then getting them into OBS Studio, which is very powerful, but also is teaching somebody who comes from like a traditional functional business unit how to use OBS is a real foreign language to them.
Yeah.
So we're looking
Yeah.
for something that was like easy, but also enterprise grade for us. And where we landed with the Pearl Mini was just kind of happenstance of like we needed a balance.
Right.
And for us, it was pretty easy because we could configure all of the like template shows that we had. We were able to distribute them and have them saved on the device so that no matter what state the device came back in, we could basically revert it to that configuration profile, get it back to a good branded state. But then also
Right.
we had secure login, LDAP authentication. We were able to put SSL certificates on it. We could, get it into a place where it could attach to a corporate network and be, properly secured and
Right.
maintained, but also something that users could use without, a multi-hour class about it.
Right. So it sounds like you're really leveraging a lot of, some of the things we've put in there very intentionally, and but sometimes some of those features, it's always a question of how many people really use them or need them. And you mentioned some of the ones
Hmm.
there that really do make the Pearl stand out in terms of AV products, common in IT products, but not so much in AV products, and
Hmm.
things like LDAP authentication, SSL. So I'm assuming you enabled HTTPS to go along with that.
Hmm.
Um, are you also using 802.1x, or is that something that's not quite there yet internally?
We're not using that yet in our
Okay.
environment, but yeah, like our large town halls, like the CEO all company town halls. Of course, at a company our size, we have a dedicated production team.
Right.
Those men and women are amazing, and they have a ton of history with video production and things like that. Um, those are in like staged areas with a dedicated isolated network. Nobody's gonna, be able to get on and see the NDI feeds that are on that network, stuff like
Right.
that. And this was more, we need it to work on the traditional regular corporate network because anybody's going to check it out. And having those things like SSL and LDAP authentication really helped for that so that we don't have somebody logging in because they can technically access it on the network. Having somebody
Right. Right.
like butting into somebody else's live stream and messing with them, that really helped prevent a lot of that.
Right.
So yeah, it's
No, that's definitely
worked out
good.
pretty well. Yeah.
So we were talking about some of those setups. Obviously, those fixed positions, network security becomes important. But obviously, we started talking largely about the work from home environment. I wonder if
Yeah.
maybe you could share with us a little bit, even a picture if you have one of what
Yeah.
your at home setup looks like in particular, in terms of the way. Obviously, you've been operating for quite some time now in terms of running all of this and doing your own live streaming and
Hmm.
YouTube stuff as well.
Yeah, let me get my screen share up here. I've got a picture recently, right there. Um, hopefully that's coming through okay. But yeah, I recently got a Pearl 2. That's how I'm sending my SRT signal to you to test out. So this is my desk as of a couple days ago with the setup where I can go live and be the producer and the presenter of my own live streams, talk about Office 365. Where this started, I've got a video on my YouTube channel from back in March where after one of these, OneDrive 101 or Microsoft Teams 101 classes that I taught at the beginning, I said, hey, why don't I grab my Osmo Pocket and go through my setup? And that was a Pearl Mini at the time.
Right.
So I've lost access to our couple of Pearl Minis because we actually have moved them back on site to be used in a dedicated space for fitness classes now.
Oh, okay.
And fortunately, I've gotten this one to borrow, so I'm able to test out things like Teams NDI and other integrations with Office 365. And this is my battle station, if you will, for the last couple weeks. I've got my laptop set up. That's how I'm looking at you right now through
Yeah.
my mirrorless camera, and um, the laptop and the camera are the laptop screen is dedicated to sharing because it's a better aspect ratio than what my big
Right.
ultra wide monitor is. If I put the ultra wide into the live stream, it would look weird and have
Yeah,
scaling
you and I have
problems.
that
You
same
know,
problem.
yeah. So I kind of dedicate that to sharing the screen and doing demos, and that way I'm looking at the camera during that time. But the
Right.
laptop and the camera are running into the Pearl 2 currently. And then I'm actually looping that back using a capture card. So the Pearl 2 has those HDMI outputs. I'm coming out of
Mhm.
there into a USB capture device. And then I'm using this setup, what you guys are seeing with my lighting and my lapel mic. I'm using that as my Teams webcam for all of my Teams meetings as well. Because as kind of the architect for Office 365, I'm scrutinized a lot by my users,
Right.
and
Of
I
course.
can't afford to be the guy who joins and like doesn't look good and has like the up the nose camera.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I join and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you have like this ridiculous video," and then I go into like, "Well, I actually tore down my whole office in April. I kind of came to the realization that we were going to be doing this for a long time, so I took a week off of work and I painted this room." And set it all up for video specifically. And then now I have this nice dedicated space to just hop on a Teams call or make a YouTube video either way. And it kind of
Yeah,
helps me with procrastination a little
yeah.
bit.
I think I'm on my third iteration of my home office, and I know Cameron's on his
Hmm.
like 10th. I think he's bought a whole new house just for his. But um,
Yeah.
it's but yeah, those things happen, right? Is that like as you start to learn and your setups evolve and you start to kind of change how you
Hmm.
interact with these things, yeah, you inevitably have to change it up for sure. Um, so you mentioned there, you obviously you experiment a lot. You're doing this live streaming stuff.
Hmm.
Let's look at specifically because I do get a lot of customers asking about this, and that is in the Microsoft context. You mentioned Yammer slash I guess Microsoft Stream and
Yeah.
Teams and all these things. The Microsoft lineup of some of those, sometimes there's some overlap. Sometimes things are confused as to which components are which because they
Hmm.
use umbrella things. Like just under Teams, for example, all of those things technically could exist. So it's this weird
Yeah.
thing. Maybe talk a little bit about how you're using the pearls in the context of things like Yammer and the larger 365 environment.
Yeah. So currently, the way that Microsoft 365 live events are set up, there's two main ways that you can produce or encode the video. There's the Teams encoded live event. It used to be called Quick Start because all you need is the Teams application.
Right.
And that one is the path that works for externally facing as of this time right now. So you have a little bit of limitation, but you also have really good ease of access for
Right.
getting up and going to a very large group of people. Currently, you can live stream for up to 20,000 attendees until the grace period runs out. I believe they've extended it to June, but
Right.
the other pathway currently is RTMP, and with that, you can expose the video through Yammer, Microsoft Stream, or Microsoft Teams as the way to watch the video, but you're bringing in the ingestion through RTMP or RTMP-S. You can actually just flip a switch to get secure RTMP.
Right.
And that's what I personally do with the Pearl and what our fitness classes are doing. Our audience is the associates themselves watching on Yammer or on Microsoft Teams. So I send the feed over RTMP because that's just what I prefer from the Pearl, doing it that way. And that's worked out really well for us. But the way that we set it up was manually configuring the RTMP settings on the Pearl, or if we're coming from OBS or something like that. There's a great document that I can share with you guys that are um, like what settings do you set for the keyframe interval, the resolution, the bit rate? What about the audio settings?
Yeah,
Microsoft
I just threw
documented
that.
that. Okay,
Yeah, I
yeah.
just threw that into the chat for people to check out if anyone is
Nice.
using Teams or anything like that. Yeah,
Hmm.
Microsoft has luckily put together some good documents for that. Not all
Yeah.
platforms do.
Fortunately, it's all in the right order, so we just kind of run down the configuration and get it all set. And that's been really good for us. I'm hoping to see over the next year. I'm hoping that we'll see a little bit of simplification in that
Right,
because a lot of my time now is spent talking to my associates saying, okay, do I need a Teams meeting? Do I need a Teams live event? Or do I need
right,
a externally encoded live event, which is RTMP? And we built this pyramid to kind of explain the different levels. And, you get some things here, but you have to give up some things. And I'm really hoping that that kind of simplifies down maybe to a world where we could like create a meeting and then just bolt on the features that we need. That's what I'm
right.
hopeful for. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's kind of makes sense with what I encounter with usually pre-sales questions from our customers is you know something usually very generic like does Pearl work with Teams? And it's like, well, it's not quite that simple. there's
Hmm.
there's these different layers, these different paths, these different ways of
Yeah.
looking at that, and what are you ultimately trying to accomplish? And obviously, you've found ways to tackle that, but obviously your associates have found ways to have great success with that as well in whichever path they've chosen to achieve, which is
Yeah.
awesome. So I guess along that line, what some have seen success. Has that been pretty common that there's been this great sort of uptake in associates using these kits and really getting into leveraging these tools?
Yeah, we were having pretty good progression until COVID hit, where we
Right.
were having a lot of practice. We kind of identified a lot of stakeholders, a couple dozen people, where we were giving them the pilot kits and saying, "Hey, try this out. Let me know what you think." And that's where we found out, like, hey, there's too many cables with this kit, or this kit
Right.
went up really easily. Um, and we were having really good momentum. And then whenever the stuff arrived, we ended up going home and then ultimately putting them in our fitness centers. But up until that point, as far as getting associates up to speed to run it themselves, we kind of created this, I was calling it the Ridealong program, where
Right.
they could have a member of my team, the Office 365 team, come along with you to your first couple events to say, we'll be here, maybe the first time we'll set it up together, show you how it works, and we'll produce it for you. We'll switch the scenes for you with you watching. The next time, maybe you click it, with our guidance, and then by the third one, hopefully you're running it. We're there for moral support.
Right.
And three was about the right number that I kind of experienced because by the third one, we got asked to not come anymore. We got
Right.
told like, hey, we don't need you anymore for our fourth one, and that's been pretty consistent. Even with our fitness center staff, where it was a large group, a couple dozen people potentially are using these pearls that are in a static location. And after a couple like instructional sessions, they've been good on their own. And the fitness center
Right.
staff specifically are running 2 to 3 shows a day from that. And I almost never hear any questions from them anymore.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, how does that compare to experiences with some of the other kit that you tried?
Mostly the struggle that I had with the other options that we were looking at was just the number of components was difficult.
Right.
And some of the ones that we looked at were all HDMI capture. So they were all HDMI ports across the back. And that's great, fantastic quality. I use HDMI, got that nice blurry background. But the challenge was that then I had to teach normal associates like a white balance and frame rate and the
Yeah.
180-degree rule and things like that. And that's kind of difficult. One of the best things about the setup that we ended up going with is that it has that UVC or the USB port on the back.
Right.
So we paired that. The camera is actually a Logitech C920 in the kit, and that way they can put it on a stick tripod and plug it right in, and it looks good. You know,
Right.
we were having struggles with a mirrorless camera that you could make it look fantastic, but there was too many buttons and menus for them to go through.
Yeah,
We
because
like
then
that
you're not only
flexibility.
yeah, they're awesome. That's what I use. That's what you use, and people who really probably spend a lot more time doing this stuff would
Mhm.
definitely prefer. But yeah, it's the struggle of then you're not only teaching them how to use 365 in a streaming context and the encoder, you're then also trying to teach them how to use a camera, and
Yeah,
that's that yeah, that can almost be the bigger challenge I think in my experience.
I think so. Yeah.
Um, yeah, especially if, they don't understand some of those basic camera concepts like white balance and things like that.
Mhm.
So what are your plans kind of going forward? You've been using the Pearl Mini, you've been experimenting there with the Pearl 2. Do you have plans and does Cerner have plans to start looking at this more broadly as you go forward? And obviously, I think a lot of the technologies that have really come to the forefront in 2020 due to the pandemic are kind of
Mhm.
here to stay, I think, in a certain degree.
I think so. We're starting up a lot of projects within IT to work with delivering webinars specifically. We're of course going to need a virtual marketing strategy moving
Right.
forward. So I think we're going to be partnering pretty closely with our marketing department about as some of the features in Microsoft Teams comes out that we're excited about, like webinar registration. What does that mean from I've got to do it all from my house and I've got to be the producer running the Q&A and the presenter all in one. I
Right.
think a lot of that is going to be powered by Microsoft Teams and whatever equipment we can get, to a person specifically on their desk for their role. Uh,
Right.
and then, moving beyond that use case in the webinar, we're also working with some of our learning associates so internal and external education. And as we talk about coming back, maybe that's in April, maybe that's in the summer, kind of depends on, vaccines and everything else that's going on in the world. As we start coming back, we're going to probably have a long-term, if not forever, situation where you might have students in the room, but you might have as many or more who aren't in the room. So
Right.
how are we going to capture whiteboard drawing? How are we going to make it so that we can set up the physical space so that the people who are physically in the room, how do they see the content that the presenter's talking about, but also the other people who are virtually in the class so that we feel like we're
Right.
all together. Those are some of the challenges that we're looking at next with Microsoft Teams technology, as well as some of the hardware technology like Microsoft Teams rooms, and
Right.
setting up like what camera do you do in a room? Do you do a digital whiteboard, or do you capture it with a content camera? How do you enforce social distancing so that not too many people come into the room at the same time? I'm really excited. There's a lot of innovation coming from Microsoft over the next quarter or two around that space for using your phone as a remote for Microsoft Teams, so you don't have to
Right.
touch the conference phone that's on the table.
Yeah,
We'll see
it's
where other products kind of fit in that stack as we go.
yeah, it's been really impressive to see, even in the past, 11 months or so, how
Mhm.
much Microsoft has advanced that platform, partly out of
Yeah.
necessity, but a lot of it has been very innovative, which is, fantastic to see.
Mhm.
Um, you know, not to dump on Microsoft too much, but a company that really kind of sat back on its heels with Skype for a decade and did really nothing at all. And then all of a sudden, just coincidentally, as they were, focusing on Teams anyways, the pandemic hit and they've had to completely, really
Mhm.
put a lot of effort into it. And they've done some really amazing stuff in terms of trying to, maybe not revolutionize, but at least evolve that conferencing
Mhm.
where they're all basically the same at a baseline level, right? It's just what
Mhm.
you can do that makes it slightly easier to use, that's slightly more powerful, and I
Mhm.
and I think the together mode thing is really cool. Support for
Yeah.
NDI is amazing. Well, the fact that you can create events either using the app or using third-party encoders, it's like all of that is just extremely valuable for corporations, especially ones the size of Cerner.
Yeah, it's been really exciting to see over the past year, and I work closely, with people at Microsoft. I have contacts there to share feedback and things like that, and it's been fun to see not only, maybe in some ways you catch up to the competitors in the space, but then seeing those innovations like Together Mode
Right.
or NDI, like you mentioned. At first, I personally thought Together Mode was kind of hokey or weird, but to be honest, I turn it on now more often than I don't. And
Yeah.
it was funny, they went into like a brain study about like how do we not make people uh, just mentally exhausted by having these calls all day every day. And Together
Yeah.
Mode was kind of, at first glance as an IT guy, I'm like, well, that's totally just marketing stuff. But it really does make me feel less tired to see people cut out and kind of in the same virtual room rather
Right.
than
Yeah.
seeing all of their backgrounds and kind of like playing like I Spy. Is that a Game Boy behind him? I like those. you know, so
Yeah,
it's been
exactly.
fun
And,
to
and again,
watch.
that's one of the fascinating things is that, yeah, they did it, but they also backed it up with actual research, which is just
Hmm.
kind of different in the space, and not to dump on Zoom, but what was Zoom doing in the meantime? Well, they were putting some Snapchat style filters in. Who cares? Like it,
Hmm.
totally not valuable to a corporate environment in any way, shape, or form. So it's just interesting to see the different choices being made. But kind of along that line, and maybe bringing us into wrapping up here, and again, John, really appreciate being here today. What's your kind of general advice for companies that are looking to kind of do the same thing you've been doing, that you've been obviously very successful at implementing at Cerner?
Hmm. Um, I would say in broad strokes, maybe not necessarily video specific. It's as an IT administrator, as an IT architect, don't be afraid to kind of really try some of this stuff that you see in the industry, stuff that you see, the kids doing in college, because I mean, ultimately, those groups are going to end up being your workforce, and
True.
one of the things that I learned, I've been at Cerner now for almost 15 years. One of the things that I learned is we've seen uh, these things come up, like enterprise file sharing and stuff like that, and it gets dismissed by traditional IT as like, you know what, we've got our file shares, they're backed up. Everybody wants to use a traditional file share, but then all of a sudden, people come into the workforce expecting to be able to do those types of things at work, and live streaming has been the next one for me, and
For
it's
sure.
been really interesting to get into it. I certainly don't come from a video background at all. It's been out of a point of necessity, really, where I'm an IT guy. I'm an IT like driving adoption. I need people to use the things that my team delivers to them. So rather than meeting with every team meeting of 30,000 people, I created videos, little tips, little how-to, so I don't have to do it 1,000 times for every person.
Right.
Um, and embracing that has kind of led me into getting interested in video. And then as a result of that, saying, okay, well, I see this kind of bubbling up. How can we meet associates when they come out of college so that we don't have a problem with like security and with information architecture and things like that? Uh, so I would just say broad strokes advice. Don't be afraid to try this new stuff. And maybe it doesn't pan out. Maybe something is just a fad that will never go anywhere. But I've seen more often than not that you hear about something and it's like, oh, Microsoft might buy TikTok or something like that. And everybody made fun of it in the world. Um, but there's always something there where like something that completely was consumer, had no place in business. Eventually, there becomes a business need for that, and it becomes
Hmm.
like, how did we ever get work done before that? And that's where
Right.
like Slack came in and persistent chat. Uh, Being on the forefront of that and just knowing what's going on has helped me a lot over my career.
No, and I think that's fantastic advice. And you're absolutely right. I think right now we're definitely seeing that where, those first generation of streamers, if you will, are entering the workforce in a big professional way. 10 years from now, it's going to be kids who are currently doing remote schoolwork through conferencing apps,
Hmm.
Zoom, and Teams, and so on. So, what's their expectation going to be? And, employers need to be prepared to meet that because people's expectations are changing. And as you pointed out, some of the things you're trying to do in terms of digital marketing and outreach, but also internal training. It used to be people would fly around all corners of the globe spending huge amounts of money to kind
Hmm.
of even still limited delivery of that stuff. And that can all be done online. And there's no reason not to try. And doing it more frequently keeps people more informed and more together. And the tools are there. You just got to play with them.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, John. Really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions for John, please throw them into chat here while we just have a few seconds left. We put some links into chat to John's YouTube channel as well. So check that out if you have any interest in some of the things he's doing. You had a video about the fitness center setups as well. Is that a public video?
Yeah, it is. I will
Okay.
drop both of those videos, the fitness center setup and my home setup, like right at the beginning of the pandemic. I'll drop both
Yeah.
those in the chat for everybody.
Yeah, that'd be awesome because we get questions all the time around the fitness, stuff as well.
Hmm.
Because again, everyone's trying to figure out how to keep those types of activities going, in some ways even more important than work from home. I don't know about
Hmm.
you, but I'm far less active working from home than I was going into the office. So trying to find those ways to keep people moving and active and healthy is critical, and any tools we can put into place to do that is
Yeah.
awesome. So so yeah, everyone check that out, and hopefully you find some of that helpful. And as always, you can always leave us a comment down in the comment section or in chat. And thank you for joining us. Our next episode will be on January 28th. We're going to this new format where we are not doing weekly. We are doing kind of every other week. We haven't decided which term to use for that, bi-weekly or every 2 weeks or whatever it is. But we're going to have some really interesting stuff coming up in those next few shows going into the start of this new year. So thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you found this interesting. We will see you on the next one. Stay safe out there and keep smiling. 2021 is finally here.